Добрий вечір усім. Good evening. I have a huge privilege to host this night's event during the PEN's Ukraine's regional meeting. We have a very, very important discussion tonight. I would think that I'd say even that it's a kind of key discussion because we would try to combine very many important plots, very many important topics in during this discussion, because this will be a conversation about Europe. We are in Europe. We are from different parts of Europe, from different ends of Europe, I would even say, and I think that it would be very, very important to combine our point of view, to combine our perspectives, and to discuss what is the situation of Europeanness now, of European idea, and what we as a people of letters, as a people who work with words, with meanings, with semantics, and as a people who tell stories. How should we tell the European story in the happiest way, in the most successful way? I would not say that in the most proper way, but in the happiest way, in the happiest for all of us, for each of our countries, each of our peoples. And I'm really happy to present our guests. We are welcoming Mrs. Frouke Zantінґ, who represents PEN-Netherlands here. Ms. Frouke Zantінґ is a writer, journalist, and researcher. She spent almost 2 decades in Turkey as a correspondent for Dutch media, and she wrote 2 non-fiction books. And in 2020, she made her debut with a novel, Meral. Ms. Frouke Zantінґ is a board member of PEN-Netherlands, and she is also a representative and a member of the Writers in Prison Committee of PEN International. We are very happy to have you here in Kyiv. Welcome, Ms. Zantінґ. Another guest, very, very important guest that we are really happy to have here, represents PEN Georgia. PEN Georgia, a country which is again on our agenda, and we are still observing what is happening now in the streets of Tbilisi, and supporting this liberation movement, because it's a liberation movement. It's a movement for democracy and European values. So it's very important that you are tonight. You are with us. We are welcoming Ms. Hatouna Cxhadadze from PEN Georgia. Ms. Cxhadadze is a university teacher, translator from Italian. Am I right? From Italian, and Ms. Cxhadadze was awarded an Italian Order of Honor of Italy for her translations from Italian. Congratulations. And so we are really, really delighted and honored that we have you here, and we can also discuss this Georgian perspective today. We're welcoming Ms. Karol Ms. Karol. Okay, that's a proper order. Sorry, Kарлes. We are gentlemen, okay? Sorry, Ms. Karol Mesробян from PEN France. Ms. Karol Mesробяn is a poet, literary critic, reviewer, and performer. She has published poetry and prose texts. She authored up to 10 poetry books and dozens of critical reviews, and we are really happy to host you as a representative of our very friendly PEN Center, PEN France here. Welcome, Ms. Mesробяn to Kyiv. Торнер. Kарлес, we are really happy to have you here. Kарлes is an old friend of PEN Ukraine, and we were happy to host you during the PEN International Congress in Lviv, Ukraine. It was the first PEN Congress to be held in Ukraine, kind of initiation for Ukrainian PEN, because it was the first big event organized by our center, and you helped us very, very much at that time. And we are also very happy to have you here today. Kарлes Torner is a poet, novelist, and essayist, a university professor. He is a former president of the Translation and Linguistic Rights Committee of PEN International, and a former executive director of PEN International, a prolific publicist and essayist who published much. And I left your book somewhere. I wanted to show it, but yes, if you can. I'm sorry that I don't have it here with me. Yes, please show it. It's super fresh, super brand new Carlos's novel, which is entitled, if I can try to read it in Catalan, Ukraina, mon amour, Ukraine, my love, Ukraina, mon. Thank you, Kарлes, for this novel. It's so very important to have you as a voice which articulates Ukrainian affairs in Europe and the world. Thank you for coming, and we will be very grateful to Anna for translating from and into French. It was the urgent situation slightly, so we are very, very grateful to you that you agreed to help us tonight. Thank you. Well, the title of our conversation is Europe, time to rewrite, time to reread. So we have two important perspectives tonight. First is European idea, or Europe as an idea, Europe as a system of values, Europe as a space, as a geographical space, as home, Europe as home, where we want to return, where we need to feel secure, to feel good. How to build it politically, but also how to build it using words. So the second important perspective I'd like to discuss tonight is what can we as writers, as people who work with words and letters, as the people who understand how important is to secure, to guarantee freedom of expression. What can we do in order to help Europeanness now, European idea now to survive? Because why survive? Because when we were planning this discussion, we with Tanya, Teren, and Alisa, we understood that Kiev and Ukraine now is a very good place, very appropriate place to talk about, to discuss about Europe, because European values, freedom, democracy, pluralism now are endangered here, first of all, and this is a place where we have to fight for these values. So it's very sharp. We have to clear up the meanings of these terms. We have to know what we fight for. we have to understand the semantics very clearly of these words. And second, it was about the place, and now about the time. Why it's important to talk about it now, because we have a feeling that Europe now is endangered. not only because of Russia's aggression against Ukraine and the Kremlin's hybrid war against European Union. That's what we can observe as the constant and rather dangerous information campaign in order to dismantle the European idea, in order to destroy it from the inside. The part of this campaign, but not only, I believe that it's not only the processes that we can observe especially in East Central Europe, now in Hungary, in Slovakia, in Northern Macedonia very recently, because they have shifted their political course very recently, with what can become an obstacle on their way to Europe. It's not only, maybe I'm not right, but my opinion is that it's not only inspired from the outside, but this is partly the internal European idea. It comes from the inside as well. And if Europe is not only geographical space, but the space of words, if Europe is a story that we are telling all the time, we are constantly telling and retelling this, what can we do now? If this is happening now, maybe we have told something wrong or insufficiently, or maybe we have to reinterpret, to reread something, to retell something. I would like to start with this question regarding your personal view. I would like to start with a very personal view. Maybe we'll start with Ms. Frouke sounding from this part of Europe. What is Europeanness for you personally now, in this place and this specific time?
You mean, or in time?
Your idea. What is it for you now? At this moment, what do you understand?
Yeah, I'm representing PEN, but I'm speaking, of course, for myself here, and I think everybody can more or less agree on that. What I'm saying is, for me, coming here, being here with you, is, I think, for me, the central idea is we share the same values. We share the idea, and maybe I'm even being here and seeing how your country is completely under threat still. You have a big part of your country where is the front. You're fighting a war, but you also are very determined as a nation that you have to fight for not only your own destiny, but that your destiny is together with Europe. And sometimes I can say that I'm a bit jealous of you, because you have this clear goal. And what I see in Europe now, and as I take Europe as a whole, I can say that we are a country, we are a continent, or we are 28 countries. Think that we unite in the idea of values, we share values. But I think if you look very closely, and it's been very rapidly, that we are internally very divided, that not only as countries from different, so you already mentioned Hungary, you mentioned Slovakia, but there is others. And we see that a lot of countries, you can look at Italy, you can look at France, is under threat of internally divided by the left and say the middle. The middle is disappearing a little bit in all these countries. We are either going to this or to this. And the ideas of the right, ultra-right, how you want to call it, is gaining. So I think it is what values are we actually, I think for me the crucial questions is, to belong to Europe, do we still share values with each other? Because I think what we see nowadays, and you cut me when you want to I'll go to other questions, is that what I found very disappointingly is that we see that in the European Union, they always find ways not to be concrete and say to countries, this is unacceptable. For example, if you can pay because you don't want to take care of the migrants, we cannot divide migrants as asylum seekers all over Europe, but you can pay money. I think it's the beginning of the end. Because what we share that, can you pay? Are we? So I think this is a very important question for me. The question before what we tell about Europe is that we have to regain the concept of Europe. It's like an internal, it's like a mental, it's like a war, because a lot of people seem not even to understand anymore what the value of Europe is. And there is this nationalistic concept of trying to put national borders around you because you want to be secure yourself of migrants. So it is a little bit like we live in the nowadays world that people want the benefits but not the duties. And so I think for the first round,
it's that what you articulated is very important, because and it makes me think that maybe the idea of the United Europe from the very beginning it was very idealistic, and didn't it play a role of, so to say, a warm bath for the members, that they kind of relaxed within the Europe, having in mind or imagining it as a super secure, near perfect structure that is capable to protect the members from all the outer world, as if the outer world has nothing to do within Europe. It's so that within, if you are within Europe, you can relax, you can stop controlling, you can stop caring of many global processes. What do you think about this?
I think Corona has proven you completely wrong, because we were depending for everything from China and all these things. So what was
not my opinion.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, to get it a little bit sharp for the sake of the discussion. But I think it was a shock to a lot of people that we were so depending on China for the mouth masks and all the other things, and we are very depending for the chips. The chip industry is completely depending on China. So I think what we realized in Corona is that we need to be very much more self-sufficient, and in the meantime to be competitive with the rest of the world. But and I disagree also with you that Europe, the concept of the idea was that we are free, we are comfortable, we are like this. It's never been. It started like an economic. It started like an economic. It was coal and all the things, and then it was just the idea after the Second World War that to prevent another war, and then we had the and then we moved on to an organization that was based on values, democratic values, and economic and values. It's always been, we in Holland say, we are the entrepreneur and the preacher. These two things comes together. And it's not always coming together, because it's entrepreneurship has different values than democratic values. So the whole idea is I think it was still, it was from the drawing table. It was a concept that was materialized from people who were thinkers, people who were very, very visionaries. Yeah. But it was something not coming up from the grassroots. and the idea was to prevent war. That was and that was also the idea behind why more and more and more members got access to it. And I think that what we see now, we have seen during the financial crisis in 2008, what we say the North and the South, the people who had their budget in order, and the countries who had not budget in order, the Greeks. It was all a bit of a row, and you saw the German, how the Germans made it very sharp. And also the Dutch, the Greeks should get their own butts together. And we see now that we are facing so many other questions than ever. The world, it is a polarized world we're seeing, and the migration issue, because that is, I think, a very big issue, is that the rise of nationalism in Europe is related to the asylum seekers and the workers, migrants from Central and Eastern Europe. And that rise is enough, because I think it's not personally always against these people who are coming, but it's also about housing issues. It's about a lot of other issues. It's about, okay, they get social houses, they get this, they get money. Where, at the end of the day, what is the real? Are we paying for them, and we are still poor, and we are still not having houses? So it's a huge crisis in Europe among the concepts, and I think that is what we have together. We have already in this PEN International, because we are sitting here as PEN people. The concept of international solidarity is, I think, what we're losing the concept of international solidarity in Europe. And I think, to come to your terms, what we as PEN very, very much have in the front of our work is freedom of expression is one of the most important things that we share in order to survive as cultures, to survive as persons. And what books can bring you to is that, and what translators are very important, is that open up worlds for each other, so we can at least connect with each other, we can understand without political ideologies. And for me, this is one of the main reasons why I am in PEN, because I don't want to defend an ideal, I don't want to defend a political direction. I want to defend a crucial concept. If that it's like the canary in the mine. If we lose this, if we can't have freedom of expression, if we can't have literary freedom, if we can't have books being translated, bringing in the country, getting them in the market for a reasonable price, then we are doomed to be inward oriented. And I think this is not what we want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still thinking about what. Yes, you raised this question, this problem of capability of idea of Europe, not as an idea, but as a real organism, economical organism, to survive in a contemporary world with all these global processes. How to handle this, the migration, these dependence on very specific distribution of global distribution of goods. This dependence on Chinese production. What can Europe contradict it? But now I'm thinking I'll try to move to Georgian issues, and to ask Ms. Hatuna Cxhadadze not about this specific moment, not about what is happening now in the streets of Tbilisi. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but now I would like to ask you, as a representative of a European aspiring country, and about this aspiration. What does this mean? Because Ukraine is also an aspiring country, and our very important goal and our dream, sweet dream, is to become a EU member, and we are still fighting for it. But and it's very important. It's very proper. It's noble. But on the other hand, I'm now thinking about my generation, and even the generation, even more the generation of my parents, my dad specifically, who always had a very idealized idea of Europe. The Europe was everything good, everything what was better than here. So the expectations of two generations of people from our part of Europe, East Central Europe, was rather one-sided, I would say, that to access Europe in order to get something from it. And maybe this is one of the problems why we can observe now these anti-European tendencies in Central Europe. Maybe they are just feeling disappointed. They did not get what they expected, and what can we do now? We are we come from the aspiring countries. Maybe it's not still too late to prevent it, to avoid this way. And maybe we now have to think how to tell this European story within our countries in order not to provoke these too high expectations and then disappointment. How to come to Europe in order to contribute something, to bring something, not only in order to expect something from it. What do you think about this? And how do you observe it from inside Georgia?
Thank you. Oh my God. It looks like we are aspiring to something which is in a very bad shape, actually. Quite poor circumstances. Frouke described it, thank you, first of all, for inviting us here. I'm so happy and so proud to be here, and I wanted, just before going to the topic, I wanted to just say hi to our Ukrainian friends and say that despite what Georgia government is showing right now, Georgian people is with Ukrainian people and feels to be here, and absolutely somehow feels your case as our case. Obviously, it's in a different, to a different extent, but still. And we understand that we are under the same threat and same destiny somehow. And we really believe, absolute majority of Georgian people, that Ukrainians are doing our job right now, and Ukrainians are fighting our fight right now. And we admire you for that, and we love you, and we will be standing with you always. And thank you. So about Europe, I was just thinking, we're a very, very small country, right? It's just, tiny country of 3.5 million. And what you mentioned about aspiring to Europe in order to get something, right? It was maybe the case some years ago, but I really think that now it changed somehow, and especially it changed when visa liberalization came for Georgia. So now we don't need visas to get to Europe, and somehow, because Georgians are really very attached to their land, and we see the situation that they are not necessarily going to Europe in order to to stay there and to get all the benefits as European citizens. Not necessarily. Somehow this changed, and what I see in Georgians in recent years, and especially in recent months, it became so visible. We want to claim our identity close to European identity. And you mentioned that European Union Europe was created based on economic, that was the economic union was the first stuff which somehow gave the foundation to Europe, but the very aim was still not allowing war, right? So it's still value. Then the first tool was the economic union, but the aim, the objective was that. So it was an ideal. It was a value. Then economic instrument, let's say, was chosen somehow to be the first and the most efficient instrument. But so we really believe that it's about values, because geographically speaking, we are where we are. Caucasus it's quite, it's pretty distant from Europe. But if in this tiny country, in the middle of nowhere for many Europeans, literally, quite distant from, not for you, I know, but, somewhere in the Caucasian mountains, and having this huge border, which is Black Sea, which separates us physically, right? And having the neighbors which we have, Russia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. And if this little spot in the middle of nowhere claims its identity based on values and says those values are European values, I really think that European Union succeeded, and Europe in general succeeded, because it was based on values, and so it succeeded in spreading the values. If those values are admired and respected and somehow aspired by Georgians somewhere in Caucasus, so I think it worked. It is Europeans are doubting European unity right now, and as you explained so clearly, and they are questioning themselves, right? Certain values, and if they still share those values. But at the same time, I'm not sure if I'm clear in this, but I really want to explain it well. If those values which the Europeans are somehow questioning are unquestionable somewhere else in Georgia, so Europeans succeeded. I really see it this way. It worked. This concept, these values worked, because the initial values are spread now and are respected and inspired. So that's how I see, So for us, it's a value-based union, absolutely. That's what we claim. And if you come to Georgia, I don't know how many of you have been there, but you really see that it's sort of strange country, because you feel that you're not in Asia, you're not in the Middle East, you're not exactly in Europe, but you feel this European belonging in culture. And Georgians somehow, this is the only way, because I mentioned the neighbors. We have good relationships with Armenia, with Azerbaijan, with Turkey, absolutely. Not with Russia, obviously, but still, Georgia is really unique. In this neighborhood is really unique, and is really somehow a European hub, cultural hub, even if it's a tiny country. So we really believe that that's our place in terms of values, in terms of beliefs, in terms of respect of, human life, just the simplest of the things, That's Europe for us. That's Europe for diversity, which is threatened in that area. And unfortunately, it becomes to be threatened in Georgia too. Just nowadays, we are observing awful developments, and the government, which very, very dangerously links these demonstrations, and the rhetorics are linked to, demonization of LGBT community, for example. And today, by the way, today is 17, right? Mm-hmm. Today is the day against homophobia and transphobia, International Day. And Georgia government established today, which was already, I mean, I don't know how, when it was established as the International Day of against homophobia and transphobia, Georgian government established it as the day of, what's called, I don't know, family, but they mean traditional family, you know. And there are now demonstrations right now in Tbilisi. Exactly. Yes, and the values, family values, or something like that, and they intend family, obviously, men, women, and children. So, and that's it. So somehow, and we are fighting against this, and somehow we understand that we stepped back in a certain way, unfortunately, but we're not going to, to give up and to surrender. Absolutely, because there is no way back. We can just step ahead.
I'm sure, I'm absolutely sure that you will succeed. And this is not my hypothesis. I'm sure because I can prove it. Because when I was in Georgia especially during last 2 years, I understand perfectly well what you mean when you say that there is Europeanness in Georgia. Sometimes you are not even, you cannot even understand where does this Europeanness come from? Because geographically you are between two seas. I mean, Caucasus region is geographically it's far from center of Europe, okay, but this is a country when you feel European, when you can feel this mutual respect to the human being on every step. This was what is very hard to you can very hardly experience it in the other countries of the region. When I'm recalling my only visit once in my life, I was in Russia, in Moscow, and despite the huge urban ambitions of this metropolis, you feel like a tiny ant, or I don't know, some tiny beetle lost in this huge stone desert. In country in Tbilisi, it's a human space. That's why I'm pretty sure that you will succeed. But I'm now thinking about, I'm recalling, coming back to our European dilemmas. Okay, I'm recalling a group of European officials who came to Kyiv during Euromaidan. It was in January 2014, and it was already the time when the first cases of violence against demonstrators happened, and the first blood was spilled in Maidan. And these officials, one especially, I remember one lady from the European Commission. I think, I don't remember her name, but she was really horrified by what she saw, not because she saw blood or violence at the on Maidan, but because she saw this combination of European flags and European slogans, and blood spilled on the pavement, and it was as if European values are good, but dying for them in the 21st century is a bit too much. And now I'm thinking about what Miss Frouke Zantінґ said, what you said. Frouke said, yeah. Okay. What Frouke said about the very idea of Europe, which was created in order to prevent war, in order to prevent violence. Maybe this also is, and I'm maybe slightly will move to Kарлes. what is your opinion? Isn't this the problem that that the European idea is also partly based on this attempt to avoid direct confrontation with evil, to avoid violence at all costs? It would be preferably to hide from to not to find yourself in a situation of direct confrontation with the other, with the aggressive other. Isn't it one of the European problems? What's your opinion?
It's one of the European problems at present, for sure. We had just a couple of days here, Timothy Gartonash, and I remember that he explains that recently in the Congress for the Security of Europe, he asked the leadership in one of the halls, who among you thinks that Europe is at war? And everyone agreed that today Europe is at war, supporting Ukraine to resist. This was and then the second question was, do you think that your populations are aware that Europe is at war? And there was silence. So in this context, I think that our visit is really rewriting Europe. And we are, I think we are a kind of representation of the united Europe because of our diversity, coming from different places, but also because we have come to a place, Ukraine, which is, from my point of view, the center of Europe today. Why? Because here, the crucial challenges of Europe are dealt with. And your incredible, painful resistance is really energizing us in many aspects. First, in the defense of freedom. It's clear that your resistance to terror and your defense of freedom, democracy, human rights, cultural rights, linguistic rights, these values that are so important also for our organization, for PEN International, here we are really resisting and you are energizing our capacity of resistance. But the other thing is I will always remember that when you choose the title, you Ukrainian writers choose the title for this Congress we had in Lviv, where 300 writers from all around the world came to express the support to Ukrainians in the context of the Russian aggression. The title was Reclaiming Truth in Times of Propaganda. And you are helping us to understand that we must resist permanently, constantly, every day, every time we use social media, every time we write an article, every time we take the floor, we have to resist propaganda, because propaganda is infiltrating by everywhere. Propaganda in your case, the propaganda which is at the service, the Russian propaganda at the service of the aggression, and we need to fight it in many ways. And in that sense, I want to say that PEN Ukraine has been for me a model of how to fight propaganda. My impression is that you were ready for the challenge that came, because you had this.
We hope so.
No, but this idea that propaganda is fought through dialogue, this idea of these international dialogues that you created from the very beginning. So a few days after the beginning of the full-scale invasion, there was this first dialogue. I think it was Andrei Kurkov with Philip Sands, but then immediately I remember Victoria Melina with Sofia Oksanen. And so immediately you were able to show that you Ukrainian writers, united with voices from all around Europe and from all around the world, were able to fight the Russian propaganda. And this, as Europeans, we need to learn from this capacity, because, as we have been sharing already, all of us, we need to fight this propaganda of Europe as a kind of white, traditional family, Christian club. This program that the far right supported by the Putin's regime, is infiltrating around Europe. We need to fight it daily and to reverse it. So to me, I remember very much that one of the last public stance, the public positions of Günter Grass was PEN's manifesto for creating a humane policy of immigration in Europe. Because it's true that today we have this iron curtain in the Mediterranean, which is creating so much death, and this is a main challenge for all of us. So 9 years ago already, PEN went to the European Parliament with this manifesto, with the support of Günter Grass and 500 writers around Europe, asking for a more humane immigration policy. So we need to be able to resist in the way that you're doing. And the other thing why we think that you are also a model for us is that you are resisting any definition of Europe as something homogeneous. By incorporating the Ukrainian voices to the European debate, we are multiplying the diversity. And here we have the Georgian voice of Europe, and I represent the voice of the Catalans, the Catalan nation in Europe, which is also made invisible in the European institutions, and nevertheless is one of the voices in the debate. So by resisting with your strong attitude, you are also helping us to understand that Europe is this concert of diversity of voices, and that we need to face the aggression that is taking place in Ukraine today, that is infiltrating by so many ways, but we need to do it with this conviction that resisting is our way of being European.
Resisting against what?
Resisting against all these forces of terror that here in Ukraine are so clear. So that we need, as European countries, we need to support very actively the capacity of Ukraine to resist the aggression and to win. This war has to be won by Ukraine in a radical way, so that it will be very clear that Europe is what Ukrainians are fighting for.
Yeah, but it's in the interest of Europe that this war is won by the Ukrainians. Yeah, that is the...
It's an existential issue for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for telling this. And one of the very important challenges that we are. Thank you for appreciating these our efforts. We really try to stress on diversity, on European diversity, and on every kind of diversity. But also that what we are facing now, trying to articulate the very idea and contexts and roots of Russian aggression against Europe and against Ukraine and against Europe, we are facing another problem. It's a problem of relations between Europe and so-called global south, the former colonies, mostly former European colonies. And this can be very, very challenging because Russia now is trying to use this anti-Western or anti-European resentment in the former colonies in order to present itself, Russia, as a defender of all colonized people, it as an empire itself, as an empire which colonized its neighbors in Eastern Europe and Caucasia, Central Asia, tries to present itself as a defender of all colonized. And it's very hard to explain sometimes to the people from Africa, from Southeastern Asia, from Southern America, that Europe is different, that it's not only colonizer, that they make big eyes when we try to explain that, yes, there is an internal colonization within Europe. How is it possible? You Europeans, they consider Russians and as Europeans as well. So how can Europe colonize itself. But it's a question I wanted to ask you, Karol, if I may, as a representative of France, one of the most southern European countries, countries which is bordering with this. You Carlos mentioned this Iron Curtain along Mediterranean, and this is also a huge problem for France. How should we Europeans handle with this problem? How should we build this dialogue with global South in order to overcome this negative stereotype of Europe, and to explain these tensions within Europe, and to stress on our values?
Ça me pose un petit problème parce que vous dites nous, comment pouvons-nous penser, etc.
I'm just feeling a little problem because you're telling us how us can we think or act.
Or, on voit très clairement qu'il n'y a pas de voix européenne uniforme.
But we see clearly that there is no uniform voice from Europe, politically speaking.
Même économiquement parlant, y a-t-il une direction commune européenne?
Even economically speaking, is there a central unified leadership in Europe?
À part celle d'augmenter certains profits et de faciliter la circulation de certains fonds, si je peux me permettre.
Despite the one
to get the priority to some special profits, or to help the circulation.
Oui, money for happy few.
For the happy few.
Bon, alors voilà. Il faut constater qu'effectivement l'Europe est un concept.
So Europe, we have to make this constat that it's a concept.
Qui est un concept magnifique parce que je pense aux Géorgiens qui nous ont rejoints. Et là, c'est formidable parce qu'ils sont avec nous.
Which is also a beautiful, wonderful concept because, for example, Georgia, they are with us, and for this concept and this idea.
Ils sont forts avec nous, nous sommes forts de leur présence.
They are strong with us, and we are stronger thanks to us.
But what? Mais il n'y a pas de voix commune, il n'y a pas de direction politique commune européenne.
There is no united voice, there is not a united political direction in Europe.
Sinon, on serait déjà venu aider l'Ukraine parce que là se passe quelque chose, il y a un enjeu fondamental dans ce qui arrive ici.
If there would be one voice, united voice, we would have been already here in Ukraine to help you, because here is happening something just so important for the moment, and we would have act right now.
Alors,
ça
c'est pour le concept européen qui n'est pas suivi des faits.
So this concept is not followed by the acts.
Néanmoins, l'Europe magnifique que je vois
But the very beautiful Europe I see just emerging,
des voix qui sont là.
Is the Europe of the voices that we can hear here tonight.
C'est l'Europe des journalistes, des écrivains.
Europe of the journalists, writers.
Qui ont des moyens maintenant de communiquer numériques.
We can right now communicate via internet or numerically.
C'est le PEN Club, les PEN Clubs qui luttent pour la liberté d'expression et qui sont ensemble européens.
For example, the PEN clubs from every country were together to fight and to fight for Europe idea.
C'est grâce aux traducteurs, cette littérature qui émerge et qui est européenne parce que beaucoup de textes circulent, grâce également aux moyens numériques qu'il faut pas oublier. Est-ce qu'il faut penser avec ça maintenant?
Thanks to the translator, so that the literature can go from one part to another part, and also we can thanks the numerical internet computer ways that are very important in this transmission.
Donc je dirais que ce que nos politiques ne sont pas capables de faire, nous, notre présence tous les quatre, eh bien, nous prouvons que nous désirons et nous allons certainement réussir à le faire.
So what the politician cannot do, we are for. We will do it, and we will build a strong human Europe together.
That's all.
That's all.
J'ai dit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I because we're here also to debate, because otherwise it's boring. We need to get things sharp. That's why we discuss things. And I think that partly you're right. There is no unified political voice. But we also know very, very well that there are leading countries in the European Union. And we always have said that us between France and Germany has been very, very strong. And then there are countries around. And I think Holland is in the second row. We are quite instrumental because we were the first also from the beginning in it. But the leading economic and political countries that consult very, very seriously is France and Germany. And I think also in the lecture you had 2 days ago with Timothy Kachin-Esch, that he was also saying, despite everything, nothing happens in the European Union when these two main countries are not giving their blessings. And you can see that there's a lot of informal consultations among these countries. But I think what is also very important is what you see that the full-scale war in Ukraine has also brought back another aspect of European our duties, is that we all know that Trump was very upset with the idea that a lot of countries haven't contributed even not 2% of their national budgets to defense industry, because we partly, and I think that's what I agree with you about the defense thing. We laid back. We thought there's not going to be a war coming. We don't have to have a defense industry. We don't have really armies. But the problem is also now that I think it will go, that's what everybody said, we have NATO. So for you, it's very, very important to become a member of the NATO. And I don't know what is first, if first that is important and then the EU, or it goes together, I don't know. But it is both, you need a parallel process. But the thing is that you can see now that we talk about it and it's back on the agenda. And it's not because of Trump. It is because of Ukraine war that we realized that there is something strongly we have to defend. And we realized also that the time of talking is past. Because till 24 of February 2022, a lot of people, even Macron, was thinking that we could talk him out of the concept. And I think that we were still thinking that it was a joke that he massed 100,000 a troop of 100,000 people to your borders. It was still something. And I think this is a very important thing, that we realize that the borders of Europe are the Ukrainian borders. And this is as fundamental, I think, for the whole process of where you belong to. And then these other things we can integrate.
Yeah, thank you, Carol.
Je voulais juste ajouter effectivement que
I would like to add that
cette Europe est prise encore entre une force américaine et une force russe.
that Europe is still in between an American strength and a Russian strength, in between two big powers.
Et qu'elle n'affirme pas son désir, sa volonté et son existence.
And she doesn't dare to affirm his existence, his will, and his just
son
in
identité.
this identity.
And I think that this is exactly what Russian propaganda says as well. It does not perceive Europe as a self-sufficient player. Putin does not want to meet to discuss Ukraine with Ukrainians or even with European Union. It wants to discuss it. He admits only one person, only one subject of dialogue, and it's the United States. This is also, isn't this a European problem that Europe is not considered by all world powers as a subject of world politics? So maybe we really have to think also about this. Carlos, did you want to add something to it? I had this impression. Oh, you have this mic.
Yeah.
I think you're completely right, and that we need, as Europeans, as writers, we need to support the movement towards a more federal Europe. So Corona has shown that we need a European budget able to face challenges, that we need an European fiscality, we need a change in the economical conception of Europe, we need more unity, and of course the Russian aggression to Ukraine has shown that we need a common defense, clearly structured, within NATO or not, but nevertheless the dependence on NATO in times of propaganda, in times of Trump, in times of alliance between Putin and Trump is dangerous. And in that sense, I think that the awareness exists already among the European leadership. The ways of changing this awareness in real action will depend on the support that the populations will give to this European project. And here is where I think as writers, we have a real role of building links among us. I think that this is a very political event, because what we are doing here is what should be taking place repeatedly, every day, constantly, so that the European leadership appears. It's true that today we have a problem of leadership at the European level, but leadership can emerge at any time. There are very good European leaders that do not appear at present, and they will emerge as soon as this movement will be more strongly created, and we have a role in the creation of this movement.
Yeah, thank you. And I wanted to open floor to our audience. Maybe if you have any comments or questions, you're really welcomed to ask. I would like to open it. Yes, please. Please take a mic.
I had some. I have something like 10 or 20 questions. Like just the first one would be, we own some Russian money here in the European Union. We have some frozen assets, like something like 20 billions of euros. What do you think about these assets? This is this money, this Russian money, is frozen. Is frozen? Yes.
Money, and I think it's the interest, because the frozen money has also accumulated interest, is going to Ukraine in order partly by buying defense industry and partly as a loan or as money.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think there's already ideas about it.
You're talking about the interest, ma'am, but I'm talking about the whole money. Like, should we confiscate the whole money as the American did? Like we would be allowed to take like the 2 billions of euros, of Russian euros, and to take the whole money, because I do think that at least like Russia will have to pay for the damage they are causing here in Ukraine. So what do you think about that? Do you think like we should keep like a certain taste of I don't know how to explain it, like to be prudent, or should we like go and prove that we can take decisions and take the whole money? What do you think about this?
I think that very soon there will be a second wave of more radical positions by the European Union. And as soon as Ukrainian people and Ukrainian army will be able to continue the resistance and repelling the Russian aggression, the tendency in Europe is going to be that issues like this will be better solved. I'm not a specialist in the issue. I don't know how to be done, but it's clear that in front of a country that breaks all rules, Europe has to be able to break some rules in the financial market in terms of justice and reparation. So and I think that in that sense, you have been successful. I know that there is a lot of propaganda, a lot of debates in the social media in Europe, but the narrative of Ukraine resisting terrible, terrorific aggression is completely unanimous among the European leadership, and I would say among the large sectors of culture in Europe. So I think that this second wave of more radical actions, and one of the radical actions would be to use these financial assets for reparations.
I think that you are from a point of justice and justified case. You're completely right that we should confiscate this money. But I think that we also have to understand that in democratic countries, we need to regulate it carefully. And I think that is what is different from dictatorships, autocratic countries, and like this. We have to do it orderly. And if then the outcome is that this money, because the idea is that I think that we have to be civilized towards a barbaric regime. So we have to organize it in a way that comes to our terms, and then we can find a regulation, because it's not going to be, this time it's the Russian, next time we have another conflict, and who is the one who is the judge to say this is justified? So I think for me, I must say, what is for me the Russian aggression, the full-scale war here, is for me a very black and white issue. Most of the issues in the world are not that black and white as this. There is an aggressor and there is this. So this is, I'm complete, but let's put pressure on our national governments to organize it, to finalize it.
To establish a judicial basis for it in order to think about future regulations.
We don't grab something on and give it by puppet, we organize it orderly.
Last year, in 2022, we had a project, an art project entitled The Last War. It was very optimistic. The last war, this Russian aggression against Ukraine should have been the last war. But unfortunately, I think that we are not that optimistic to think that it's the last war. So we have also to create a basis, a judicial basis for any possible future aggressions, because Russia will exist, it will not disappear, and we have to work, not only hope, but also to work on changes in Russia as well. And they have to come from the inside. The Russian changes have to come from the inside, but I think that it's also very I don't know what's your opinion. Maybe it can be one of our questions, but I think that we also cannot isolate Russia totally from the outer world. it can be very dangerous if we totally leave it outside any. What's Hatouna? What's your opinion?
I wanted to just reply to this. As a Georgian, I am obviously in my people, my country also is for drastic, absolutely drastic, measures. And for example, we're facing this issue right now. We, as Georgian people, are asking European Union apply goddamn sanctions to this man who captured the state. Ivanishvili, I'm speaking about this.
But you're talking now about your own country.
Yeah, about yes, our country. But at the same time, because we can't really stand this situation anymore, because this is the capture of power, the typical, just the dictionary definition of capture of state, what's happening in Georgia. So apply these sanctions, but then I understand what Frouke is saying, that, well, from the other side, because he's also a citizen of France, for example, by the way. So, and it's not that easy, yes, but I understand fully that we are for those drastic measures. And what about the question was
Russia not completely isolated?
Well, that is...
Should we just leave it alone? Absolutely.
on the emotional... No.
What is your opinion?
My opinion is that it will be even more dangerous. If you ask just Georgians on the emotional side, everyone would say, yes, leave them alone, completely, isolated, just to let them, I have to use this word, rot, inside, which is a bad word, I understand, I'm sorry for that. But, at the same time, we as the country which has quite a, big border with Russia, we understand that would be a major danger, and somehow I am not politician and I'm not, competent probably to answer this question, but yeah, I see it personally, I see it as a danger. So I would never ever say to just let such a huge country, right? Just physically also, it would be, I see it as a, first of all, impossible. How can you isolate such huge part of our planet? Let's call it planet, because
it makes impression. Physically.
It's not possible.
It's not that big as it seems.
Oh my God, I don't know. For Georgians,
7 time zones they have.
And so, I don't think it's the right thing to do, and also the possible thing to completely isolate this country, just cut out of everything.
And our tradition is always to keep the dialogue.
Exactly.
And I want to remember that in May 2014, just a couple of weeks, 3 weeks after the occupation of Crimea and the Donbass, Ukrainian PEN and Russian PEN and PEN International met in Stockholm with the Swedish Academy, and we wrote a statement. And in that statement, which was calling for the retreat of Russia from the occupied territories, Ludmila Ulitskaya, and I quote her, was saying that this was happening parallel to, she was saying, a tsunami of anti-freedom of expression laws, which were including the law against the propaganda of non-traditional forms of family, which was an anti-LGBTQI law, the law labeling as foreign agents any NGO which was receiving foreign funds, which is the debate. So this was happening in 2014, and these two things were parallel. So the aggression to Ukraine has been parallel to a complete destruction of the ecosystem of public debate in Russia. And our responsibility as writers from different European countries and as PEN International is to recreate that ecosystem where voices can be expressed freely. It's a big challenge. The majority of those writers who were so committed at the time are now in exile. I want to remind that in Lviv, when we met in Lviv, we had a delegation of Russian writers who came to present a report about the curtailment of freedom of expression in Russia. So we created this dialogue. So I think that it's our responsibility to continue supporting our Russian colleagues who are against the aggression to Ukraine and who are for the respect of freedom of expression in such a very closed regime as Russia has turned to be.
Is this a European responsibility or global?
Global.
Or any local communities have to do it?
I think it's
We Ukrainians sometimes hear that you Ukrainians have to do it because you know them perfectly well, and if not you, who would do it?
But
What you mean, keeping the dialogue?
Yes,
Keeping the dialogue?
yes. Sometimes we hear it, but
But I would go back to your previous question about decolonization. So decolonization is not something that has to be done only in India, South Africa, or Brazil. Decolonization is an European issue for all European countries. And this decolonization of the cultural narrative has to be done in the whole of Europe. This morning, we were in conversation with directors of several museums who were explaining to us how the narrative of the museums is now being decolonized for second or third time here in Ukraine. We have to do the same all around. In fact, we are doing
We
the
are doing
same
it
all around Europe. As in that context, I think that we as Europeans are also responsible of promoting this decolonization of the Russian mind. If we can say, it's a huge challenge. No one is more aware of how huge the challenge is than you, but I think it's a responsibility for
sometimes it's
Europeans.
like Mission Impossible.
But I'm not so concrete about the dialogue as my colleagues are, because I think that I want to establish a dialogue between people who are you can support in changing the situation in their own country. And that's we always have. We try to find groups in countries that are sharing the values that we have in order to strengthen them. And I think the problem nowadays is how we can keep the dialogue with Russia is who with who, because the people who have chosen to leave the country have understood that this country is not their country. And I think what, for example, Maxim Osipov, he is a writer, prominent writer, also was part of PEN Moscow, still is, but PEN Moscow is under the radar now, is saying if we accept the concept that we are in exile or that we are dissidents, then we accept the idea that Russia is of Putin. We have to reclaim Russia. And I think the duty of governments, the so-called democratic governments, and the duty for us as PEN is to not dictate the development in the country, but to strengthen the forces that we unite with. And I think we have this is one of our duties, I think, for the future, also for PEN International. How can we, in a way, bring this issue back into Russia? It's out. All these people who came, and partly via Georgia, via Armenia, because it was the only way they could still get out of the country, is how is there a way of bringing these voices back into the country? And I think this is the big challenge, because I think at the moment, with who are we talking inside Russia? Who are we talking? You see the pictures still in the Corona time, and you saw that the table is as long as Russia. I make a joke now, and one person is there, and Macron was there, and Putin was there. This is how you talk to each other. You cannot even see each other, and this is the idea. It's not. There is only one concept out of Russia, and that is they want to divide Europe. They want to divide Europe.
Karol.
Oui, effectivement, il me semble que pour revenir à la littérature,
Yes, indeed, I think that if we want to speak about literature again,
certainement, elle peut toucher chacun d'entre nous, qui soit russe, ukrainien, et essayer de sortir, d'éveiller le sens critique.
she certainly can speak to anybody if he's Ukrainian, Russian, and speak to his own critical sense of each one.
Et voilà. C'est tout. Pour revenir à cette liberté qu'on défend, la liberté d'expression, la liberté qui commence avant tout par considérer que peut-être certains ne sont pas libres parce qu'ils sont dans la peur ou l'ignorance.
Yes, to go back to this idea of liberty and maybe to remember that some people cannot be free because they are living in fear or ignorance.
Just about literature, yes. In every European country, like we had critical literature, you know. But the problem is with the Russian literature, all these bunch of authors, classical Russian authors and new Russian authors, are all nationalistic authors. All. Let's take an example. For example, all the dissidents or pseudo dissidents, like for example Solzhenitsyn, at the end of his life, like Solzhenitsyn, like your archipelago of the Gulag, he said at the end of his life, like Russia, finally Russia is above all. And for example, Joseph Brodsky, at the end of his life, like Joseph Brodsky died in New York, Nobel Prize of Literature. At the end of his life, wrote a poem which is called about independence of Ukraine. And this poem is like a bunch of crap about Ukrainians, like he speaks like that, like Ukrainians, like crap people, and your bed of death, like you are going to say Pushkin and not Shevchenko, you know, Brodsky said that. And this is true about all Russian authors, like. And my question is, what we have to do with the whole Russian literature? What should we do with that? So should we just put it away, or what should we do? And what about like the question of literature is a way of waking the mind of people in Russia and in here and there? Like I think there is a problem with there. They can't read anymore, I think.
But I think that, so I don't want to be misunderstood. When I say that we need to build this dialogue, it goes together with making very visible that this war of attrition, of this terror here in Ukraine, is also a cultural war. To make very clear how the museums are being destroyed. I think it's 1,300 schools have been bombed. How there is this cultural. Well, I remember Victoria Melina in one of these first dialogues. She was reminding the existence of the executed Renaissance in the 30s. The destruction of the intellectual leadership in different areas of art and culture in Stalin times. And she was saying, let's hope there will not be a new executed Renaissance, meaning the present Renaissance of Ukrainian culture and arts. So in that sense, by making visible the colonization perspective of the Russian aggression, I think that we're establishing the dialogue with the Russian writers. We're making them very clear that what's happening here is unacceptable. So you see, when I talk of dialogue, it's not dialogue in the terms of those who are aggressing. Never. It's always dialogue with those who accept that we are making very. So when I have put the Maria Primachenko painting in the cover of my novel, is because I want to make visible at home that the destruction, the bombing of the museum where Maria Primachenko's paintings were, is part of an aggression who wants to kill culture, memory, what gives life to the people. So it's not a dialogue in their terms. It's a dialogue in our terms. But nevertheless, we have to succeed in creating this dialogue. And I think that we have the means at least to start or to try.
Can I say something about just the 2 words also? As a person who teaches literature, and I teach literature, I think that the question is different with classical literature or, just Russian literature, which we teach or used to teach, and the issue of Russian authors and Russian writers, which are in exile now. I think those 2 things are separate because we can deal as teachers, for example, as professors, I don't know, at the university or at school, we can deal with literature and we can still use Russian classical literature, teaching the right things, about literature, not about the ideas, but about just, what pure sense of literature is. We can somehow, I believe, separate those texts from the ideas of Dostoevsky, for example, or Brodsky, which are crap in terms of Ukraine or Georgia. I agree with you, and pretty dangerous, but we can still somehow enjoy the poetry of Brodsky. So I don't see danger in that because we can separate ideas somehow from those texts and ideas which the authors somehow embodied, right? But it's a different issue with, for me at least, I don't know, with the authors who are in exile now. For example, Georgians are pretty resistant, and logically so, because the authors who left Russia just in 2022 or after this full-scale invasion and had said nothing about Donbass, for example, or about Georgia, and somehow, never ever expressed anything about those conflicts. This did not start right now, right? Okay, this is the full-scale invasion now, but what about them? Somehow Georgians, I understand that it's very difficult to go back and to ask each and every writer, where were you when it happened? It's kind of complicated. You can do this, but somehow on the emotional level, it matters. For us, for me as Georgian, it matters if they somehow had some position when all this started, when 2008 happened in Georgia, and when Donbass events happened. So, but now I also understand what you're saying, that I don't know, I'm not for exclusion because it's difficult, it's complicated. I met some of them actually in literary residencies. I met Osipov, I met some of others outside Russia, which left Russia right now, after the full-scale invasion, but, it's a tricky issue. I don't have an answer. Obviously, I am for dialogue if they are ready to admit. Even they're not only the full-scale invasion, but admit and recognize even their own silence in 2014 and in 2008 in terms of joy. So I don't know, those kind of things. But yeah, openness to dialogue is always very important. I don't know.
Yeah, but this has been an issue, I think, through the whole history, because this is the history with movies. Are we looking at, this is the history with beautiful painters, awful men.
That's why I'm not afraid of,
awful men sometimes make beautiful books, unfortunately, and they come away with it.
And Nazi writers, some Nazi
Heidegger is still we're still being taught in universities, and I think this is a very, we need another probably panel for that, because at the end of the day,
to deal with radioactive literature.
Yeah, but it is not. But you have first to establish the concept between, do we look at the product or do we look at the producer? And this is always been a very, very tricky question. And it comes, are we first saying we can read you because your ideas are okay? Because then also we start to be like people who make rules about what we can read and not read.
That's censorship.
It is in a way, and this is for me, it is one of the most difficult questions, but it's a very relevant question. And I think that I don't want to. I make up my mind sometimes on personal views. Sometimes I cannot look at a movie because I cannot separate it, and I can now. I know, because we have the wave of women writers, and of women writers we have the wave of women painters, so we can see that they will all be in the shadow of this big guys who used them as so-called their muse, and they didn't want to, and they grabbed on their book, and they grabbed on their publication. So we know it all, but this is very complex also for me. I don't have a black and white answer for it,
Yeah.
but I
absolutely we can see three different questions. The first is research, as what Hatouna said, that we have to explore it, and we can explore even very dangerous texts if we close it in a lab somewhere. We have to know how is it made. And second is an individual choice that you probably mean. That of course
sometimes I do, because I'm a human being. I
didn't try to choose what to read, but there is also very important, especially for us Ukrainians in our process of decolonization, our process of physical resistance, is the question of social interest and public security. This is also a level on which literature works.
But what do you mean with public security?
The literature can also bring very dangerous messages and can work as a part of propaganda. And we cannot put it aside. It can work. It is often used as propaganda as well. And it's not only the question of personal responsibility of writers, but being in an intentional or even unintentional way, be a part of propaganda machine. Some of them are very intentionally become a part of this propaganda machine. Some of them not, but they are from the objective point of view. So, yeah. I don't know how this is happening. I'm just thinking this. So I think that it's our time to close this discussion. Can it be the very, very last question? Yeah, comment.
Thank you. I would like to add, and it's very important, that in the literature we have the aesthetic dimension, and aesthetic dimension is seductive. That's why Ukrainians so sensitive to the question of Russian literature and Russian art, because it's very beautiful, and you become empathic to this side, because we're all human beings. That's why I, for myself, from the beginning of the war, set it apart, not because it's bad, not because it's not so good as Ukrainian or other piece of arts, but because you can't separate yourself from being empathic to these ideas. You can't separate entirely ideas and aesthetic part. That's what I think important about this issue. Thank you.
It is a very personal issue.
Thank you very much. And yes, a very important topic today was what literature can do in order to improve, just maybe to save our very fragile Europe. And I'm in particularly grateful to Kарлes for bringing this book. And I think that this is an example that literature can do something, that literature really can make a very, very important job. Yes. This is the example of material example of what we are talking about. So thank you very much for this discussion. I'm pretty aware that it's an endless story. It's an endless dialogue, endless discussion. So we do not finish it. We make a pause. We'll come back to it one day. I want to say thank you. I'm very grateful to Frouke, Zantínဃ. Thank you, Frouke. Thank you, Hatouna.
I'm not your. I mean, the nice thing about PEN is that we are not guests in itself. We are family.
Yes.
And
As
we
a
are
family,
here.
we are grateful to each other.
We are here to be together.
Yes,
That is.
And just also to remind, Hatouna, thank you, Kарлes, thank you, Karol, and Anna, who was kindly translating for us. Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Ostap Sливинський, who tried to moderate. Thank you for coming, and enjoy your evening. Have a nice and safe time. See you.